Welcome, O Ramadan.
Radio Sultanate of Oman 90.4 and the Sultan Qaboos Center for Islamic Culture presents Reaching Out Through Dialogue. Listen and get involved. It is a great experience for you personally. It would really create a balance on each and every one of us in this holy month of Ramadan.
Stand up.
Reaching Out Through Dialogue. Presented by Hatim Harif Al Abdussalam.
Charity.
Directed by Matloob Ayel Al Wahabi. Reaching Out Through Dialogue. A special in this holy month of Ramadan. Here on 90.4 FM. 90.4 FM.
For the pleasure of
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear listeners. Welcome to our program Reaching Out Through Dialogue. I'm your host Hatim Al Absalam, and my distinguished guest today is Mr. Ahmed Al Matani, who is a lecturer in one of the private colleges in Oman. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure too to be here.
Okay, today's topic is the importance of knowledge in Islam. And Ahmed, being with a educational background, I think we would benefit a lot from you today.
I hope so.
Okay. Knowledge is a very important element in our life. To advance a society, people must seek knowledge. Islam is one of the religions that promotes and encourages seeking knowledge. Today, we're going to talk about this important aspect according to Islam. Ahmed, could you elaborate or give us some examples or evidence from the Holy Quran and the authentic sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, on encouraging people to seek knowledge?
Okay. I'm so glad to be here again with you guys, our listeners, and with Hatim as well.
Thank you.
And talking about knowledge, I just, before jumping to your question, I just wanted to share the audience or the listeners, with the definition for knowledge.
Okay.
That I learned a long time ago. When I was, a student. That was really a long time ago. So what is knowledge? I would say that knowledge is divided into 4 parts.
Okay.
First of all, knowing about the things that you know that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing about the things that you know that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing about the things that you don't know that you know.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing about the things that you don't know that you don't know.
Okay.
So, it's sort of a very interesting, definition that I got to learn, a long time ago from professor who is Omar Khan, from Pakistan originally, but he's an American now. So that explains, the idea of knowledge. And if you just, have a deep look at the definition, you'll find that, we're talking about 4 aspects of knowledge. The first one is knowing about the things that we know that we know, which means, sometimes we know a lot of things, but we have to know these things.
Okay.
The other side of the story, or the other aspect, or the other part, is knowing about the things that we know that we don't know. So sometimes we tend to be ignorant or not well educated about a lot of topics and things in life. So we have to know these things so that we can do something about them in the future. And the third type is knowing about the things that we don't know that we know. Sometimes we tend to know things, but we don't know how to get them. So they are stored somewhere, and we need to get them to the stage or to the practical life. And the last thing is knowing about the things that we don't know that we don't know. So sometimes, we don't know about things that we don't know. So these are, the 4 categories. I hope that,
I'm a bit
I have
confused
made,
now.
So it's something to do with knowledge.
Okay.
That we should be aware of things that we know and things we don't know. Very, to put it,
in simple language.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that sounds, so philosophical, so let's go, practical.
Ahmed, thank you for giving us the definition of knowledge. Now, can you elaborate more on the first question, which is giving us evidence from the Holy Quran and the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, regarding encouraging people to seek knowledge?
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of evidence and proof, that was said, or you can find them in the Holy Quran and narrated, upon the Prophet. And actually, first of all, let's just start with the first verse revealed from the Holy Quran, which was, read or proclaim. It's a very clear invitation for the humanity, and more specifically to Muslims, to seek knowledge. So God or Allah does not start with something like, worshipping, okay, or worship, okay. He asked the Prophet to read, okay, so to show the importance of knowledge, because when you are knowledgeable about something, then you will be able to perform or any ritual, okay, perfectly and without any problem.
Okay.
So this is, the first evidence, to show that
The importance. This was the first verse revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Exactly. So just to show that, knowledge is really sacred or holy, in the religion of Islam. And I guess, even in other religions. And, another evidence would be, also another verse in the Holy Quran where God is asking, human beings and Muslims in particular to seek knowledge. Okay. And it was a very, general invitation too, that, all people, okay, all jinn, if you can cross the limits of the heaven and earth, and you won't be doing that, or you'll not be able to do that unless you have the power, or you have the weapon. And the weapon, according to a lot of people who are interpreting the verses of Quran, is what? Knowledge.
Knowledge.
So, that's also another evidence from the Holy Quran. Now, talking about the Prophet saying, there are a lot of says, by the Prophet. One of them is seeking knowledge is a must for each and every Muslim. And you can see here that it is genderless, which means an invitation for both males and females. And also seeking knowledge from cradle to the grave, which is no limitation in terms of time. Okay.
So it means that there's no certain age that you can seek knowledge. You'll always have an opportunity to seek knowledge.
Exactly. And another evidence by the Prophet is seeking knowledge even if it is in China, which is, going beyond the limit of a place.
Okay.
So seeking knowledge should not be specific or limited to certain areas. But, as long as you have the ability to seek knowledge from anywhere, so you should do it.
And that's what people do now, travel to different countries to seek knowledge.
Exactly. And, there is also another evidence to show this relation or the importance of knowledge in Islam, which is the wisdom, or wisdom is the lost property of a Muslim.
Okay.
Okay. Whenever he or she gets it, he is the appropriate owner of that knowledge, regardless from where. Whether you get it from...
Can you repeat that saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him?
Wisdom is the lost property of a Muslim.
Okay.
And he or she has the right to own it from anywhere, from anybody, as long as he or she is putting that effort.
Okay.
So this is, another evidence, to show that Islam really dedicates knowledge a big portion of the teaching that we are learning from Islam.
Now, to understand, we believe that there are two types of knowledge. Could you please take us through them?
Well, when it comes to Islam, a lot of scholars, talk about two types of knowledge. The first one is what we call it religious knowledge. And sometimes, they refer to it as high knowledge, okay? And the other type is what we call it non-religious knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, which is a kind of a tool or instrument, to carry on in our life. Now, coming back to the first type, which is religious knowledge, it's any kind of teaching, any kind of learning process that a person can gain in order to be educated about his religion or her religion. And that requires, a lot of patience and a lot of work and effort in order to be knowledgeable about your religion. And if you allow me to elaborate on that.
Before you elaborate, does
Yeah.
this mean that this is limited only to the religion of Islam?
No,
Or is it
actually.
a universal...
It's
concept?
yes, it's a universal invitation. You know,
Okay.
it's not only restricted. But first of all, we have to start with the religion of Islam, and then after that, we can go to other religions.
Okay.
Now, there is a very good verse could describe, you know, the image of the importance of religious knowledge.
Okay.
Sheikh Imam Salmi, in one of his poems, he said that, you know, an act of worship which is not based on knowledge is an act of foolishness.
Okay.
If, you know, عبادة بلا تفقه لا خير فيها إنها لبله, which means, you know, this is also another example to show that, you know, the scholars who are following, you know, the teaching of the Prophet, which is the teaching of Islam, they are emphasizing what the importance of knowledge. Okay, so that's, you know, part of what we call it, what religious, what knowledge.
Knowledge.
Okay, so we need to be educated about, you know, how we perform rituals. Okay, how to pray, how to fast. You know, since we are in the month of fasting, which is Ramadan, you know, people should be really educated about, you know, a lot of issues, you know, concerned the fasting. And this is a must thing. You know, it's not like, you know, somebody will...
So ignorance is not an excuse.
No. And, you know, even there's another statement, you know, said by Sheikh Salmi also, that says, you know, if you ask a scholar about, you know, a question, you know, religious, you know, scholar, and he made a mistake, you know, you will be accountable for that mistake.
Okay.
Because, you know, if you have, you know, if you would have made more effort, you would have not needed the scholar. And maybe the way you conveyed that question to that person was wrong. So he will not be accountable for, you know, giving you the wrong question or wrong answer. But, you know, you'll be accountable for, you know, giving or understanding or misunderstanding that.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. Now, what about the second type of knowledge?
Well, the second type of knowledge is the non-religious knowledge. Okay. And actually, it is any kind of knowledge or seeking knowledge that we usually tend to have, okay, apart from religion.
Okay.
Or anything, you know, to do with the teaching of Islam.
Okay.
Yes. So this is, you know, part of the second type of knowledge.
Does this include, let's say, like, if we're giving examples, engineering, medicine, architecture, and all those stuff?
Exactly, because, you know, these elements, you know, should be included in our lives because they make our life easier and more pleasant.
Okay.
So that is, you know, the second level of knowledge, okay, that we need to seek if it is possible. The first one is like a must.
Okay.
The second one is, you know, if some people can do it, you know, then, you know, other, you know, they shouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
But the first type, you know, should be a must
to everybody.
You know, action that everybody should be knowledgeable about, you know, his or her religion.
Ahmed will be right back after the break. Welcome back, Ahmed. Now, regarding the last point, we were talking about the two different types of knowledge, the religious knowledge and the other knowledge that has no relation with the teachings of Islam. Now, why is there a distinction between the two?
Well, actually, there isn't that much distinction between the two. We just, you know, like we tend to categorize things, okay? In order, first of all, to make it easier for people, this is one thing. And the other thing is that, you know, we need to decide what is, you know, what are the priorities, you know, in our life. So having these two distinction types was only in order to make, you know, things, what is more important than the others.
Okay.
Because, you know, some people tend to focus on one and neglect the other. And in this case, you know, most of the people, you know, tend to forget about, you know, the must type of knowledge and they focus on the other type. So this is why in Islam they tend to categorize them into two types. But they are both important, you know, in our lives.
Since we talked about the two types of knowledge, some might ask, Are there different types of knowledge seekers?
Well, once I was reading an article about this, and they said, there are 3 types of seekers of knowledge. Okay, the first type is an ant seeker of knowledge, and the second one is a spider, and the last one is the bee, okay, seeker of knowledge.
This
We're
is interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is maybe we're talking about, insects now. Okay, the first type of seekers of knowledge is the person who is an ant person, who collect data, okay, without giving any unifying, structure to them. Just, taking the knowledge, collecting them, and never add anything, okay, without any reasoning, okay. So this is one type. The other type is the spider. Is the person who spins out one's ideas in solitude. This is like a spider thing, putting ideas together in a way that they are not organized.
Okay.
Putting things from here and putting things of here, and maybe the best way to put it is the English proverb that says, "A jack of all trades is a master of none." Okay, where people tends to do a lot of things at the same time, and they don't focus on one thing, which is not totally focusing.
Okay.
But some people, they tend to get something from here and take something from here, and then at the end of the day they master nothing.
That's
okay.
right.
The third type, which is the highly recommended, is the bee seeker. Okay, we know that we always to say he is he's a very busy as a bee. That shows the connotation of that kind of a seeker. Okay, a person who is a bee seeker is the one who spends ideas. Okay, but not only in terms of in that kind of limitation. He will try to evaluate. He will try to analyze, the data that he collects. And then he will try to come up with a conclusion based on the information that's available for him. And this is, the highly recommended, type of seekers of knowledge.
That's an amazing way of elaborating this example. So Islam has contributed a lot to humanity in terms of knowledge. Is that true?
Well, no doubt about that. If we just have a very quick scan, to the history of humanity, you'll find a lot of examples, talking about that, or proving that. If we talk, pick any science, that we have nowadays, and you'll find a name that has a connection with Islam.
Could you give us some example?
If we give one example in medicine, for example. In medicine, we always talk about Ibn Sina, who published a book called Laws, or Al-Qanun fi Tibb, laws in medicine. This book has been translated into Spanish at that time, and was used, by a lot of universities, not only in Spain, but in other European countries. And this is,
as a reference.
Yes, as a reference, for a lot of years, for a lot of, I would say, decades, of years. And, it was one of the main sources, for medicine.
Okay.
If we talk about chemistry, for example, we always talk about Ibn al-Haytham. We talk about, Abu Bakr Razi, who contributed tremendously to the science of chemistry. Now, when you talk about the reflection, when you talk about all these chemical or chemistry terms, you will tend to refer to a lot of terms to these people. Because they created those terms, and they conducted a lot of experiments to show how knowledgeable they are. And it was very clear that they added a lot to the field of chemistry. Also, if you want to think about other fields like architecture, look at the buildings that we used to have, in the past. They are beautifully designed.
Yeah.
Okay, and that requires knowledge. okay, which is the second type of knowledge. And
Mathematics.
mathematics, okay, vision, even being a virtual person, so to imagine things which are not existing. So that requires a lot of knowledge,
Astrology.
exactly. And mathematics, you just talking about mathematics, we always talk about Al-Khwarizmi, okay, who added a lot to the field of mathematics, okay, especially to geometry, where he invented a lot of laws and came up with a lot of ideas to control or generate a lot of other rules, okay, that govern mathematics. So these are some of the examples. And not only that, and just to show that Islam is really highly encouraging people to seek knowledge. Was what the example that I was given, maybe they were happening at later stages, but if we go back a little bit, you find even a lot of scholars, okay, at the time of the Prophet, okay, they were asked to for example to learn other languages, which is a form of seeking knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, they were and even those who converted to Islam, they were a great help to what? To translate, the teachings, and sometimes, some of the Prophet's saying, and also even, the Holy Quran, okay, to other people who cannot understand Arabic. So that is also another form of seeking knowledge. Now, another thing about seeking knowledge at that time is, during the wartime, okay, which was a must thing, at that time, because of the clash between Muslims and non-Muslims. What happened is that, the Prophet tried to make use of what we call them, the prisoners.
The prisoners.
Yeah. By what? They say, we're going to free you if you decide to teach 2 people or a certain number of people. So to show how, especially those who were educated. So the Prophet wanted to make use of every single
knowledgeable
chance.
person.
Exactly. And in this case, we're talking about knowledge. Okay. So the Prophet, realized the importance of knowledge by asking these prisoners who are enemies at that time, but he thought only about one thing: knowledge. Get these people educated and teach them, how to write, and so move them, from being illiterate to being, educated, so that they can learn something. So this is also another thing, we should just talk about, when we talk about the contribution of Muslims.
Now that you went through some examples of successful Muslim scholars or scientists, what about the influence of Islam on the West in terms of knowledge?
Okay, this is a very good question. Okay, I would say that we really contributed a lot to the Western world. And before talking about that, maybe we should also talk about the contributions of the Western world or the non-Muslim world, okay, to the Muslim world.
Okay.
And how Muslims, okay, made use of that. They didn't neglect that. They, talking about, their relationship with China. They took a lot of things, from China. They took a lot of things, from the brothers who are staying with them, the non-Muslim, the Arabs who were Christian, and they asked them, about, different, things they were knowledgeable about. So that did not stop Muslims, to seek knowledge from non-Muslims.
To learn from them.
Exactly. So we were not, limited to our own boundaries, but, we decided to go beyond that by asking and benefiting from people who were advanced in that knowledge. But at the same time, or at the same token, or maybe I just need to give another example, for that.
Please do.
Okay. The Muslims at that time, when the Romans are living, they took a lot of technology from them, wheeling, how to move things and so on. So they took that kind of technology to implement it in the Islamic society. So these are some aspects, how Muslims, take knowledge from other cultures or other religions. Now talking about, our contribution to the other world or the Western world, I think, we have talked about, some examples, Ibn Sina, how he contributed to the Western world, and Europe in particular with his knowledge, at that time. So we contributed a lot to that one. Talking about, the insulin, injection thing, at that time. It was, created or invented by a Muslim scholar at that time. And talking about, all the other scholars we were mentioning in the beginning, Al-Khwarizmi, and then Ibn Haytham, and those people, they did a great job, to enhance and improve the humanity life. And so, we should thank, everybody who had contributed to get us to what we are in now.
Now, when we talk about knowledge, we tend to associate knowledge with certain terms. What do you think? Do you agree with that?
Well, maybe I should elaborate on that.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, seeking knowledge. Now, we have to understand what is the meaning of seeking knowledge. Being knowledgeable is not limited to getting a certificate. Now, what's happening in a lot of parts of the world is that, a lot of people are seeking certificates, rather than seeking knowledge.
Okay.
And we have to be really careful about this. Okay?
I think it started from school. We're just looking forward to pass.
Yes.
And it's not important whether we learned anything or no. It's just about to impress our parents and get a pass.
Exactly. And this is only at the school level. This fever is now moving to other levels, like we have it in colleges, we have it in higher education.
Okay.
So we need to understand that, knowledge is a sacred thing, is a holy thing. And this is why we should come back to the idea of the two types of knowledges, the religious knowledge and non-religious knowledge. Now, in order to be honest and sincere about, the work we are doing to people, we should be knowledgeable about that thing.
Okay.
We are responsible, we are accountable, for delivering the right piece of information to people. And if we are not really knowledgeable, only, holding a piece of paper or a certificate to show the world that we are knowledgeable, then it's a big problem. And we can see it in a lot of societies, and we have to do something about it. Otherwise, we will end up having, people with...
But how do we change this type of mentality?
Well, first of all, it should be at the personal level. We have to get this, what we call it, internal motivation from inside. So we have to start with ourselves. And then, with other, let's say, intensive or reinforcement, factors, from the surroundings, by having policies, maybe rules, from people who are around us, let's just start, at home. Let's talk about home. Parents, should really plant the idea of knowledge, by, asking, their kids to make use of knowledge when they are talking about their daily life. They have to really show them that when you learn something, it is related to your life and you will need it sooner or later. Okay. And this is, at the parent level. And then maybe we go to school where we have to really encourage the students to seek knowledge. And we have to test their understanding for the knowledge, so that it can last for a long time. And the other aspect is, like when you go to, like even when we preach people, when we give lectures and so on, we have to we should tell people that knowledge is something sacred. They have to understand that. They have to grasp that thing. And we should encourage them in a school, in mosque, everywhere, so that they can be aware of that term, which is knowledge.
Ahmed, we'll be right back after the break. Welcome back, Ahmed.
Thank you.
I have an interesting question, and it's always been bothering me, and I think it's an opportunity to ask you. We always come across people who seek knowledge, but then they don't share it with others. They just keep it for themselves. What do you think of that?
Well, we've got a lot of people, around the area who are knowledgeable, and then they spend a long time, seeking knowledge, but as you said, they never share it with others. And actually, here I need to talk about two things, actually.
Okay.
There's a kind of misconception about being humble
Mm-hmm.
and being educated or educating.
Okay.
And being humble, okay, or careful about what sort of information you want to convey to people is something really good. But you don't need to be too humble, where you just, keep everything for yourself because you're afraid to share things which could be wrong. Now, you won't be, if you start to share things and you are careful about them, then you'll be careful, dealing with that issue. So I think, what we should do, we should really share the knowledge that we're learning. The Prophet was saying, okay, convey even a one verse, okay, for me, okay, or upon me. So that is a very clear invitation for people to share knowledge. It's not, confined or focused, or we should, just keep it, for ourselves, but we need to share it with others.
So at the end of the day, there is no point for you seeking knowledge if you can't benefit humanity.
Exactly. And look, now if we talk about the other type of knowledge, which is the non-religious, knowledge, if these people who invented all these kind of things in different fields of life, then will never benefit. If they kept them, for themselves
And never shared with others.
then we'll never, get, from that place. Would be just behind, and we are not doing any
And
improvement.
advancement will stop.
Yes, exactly. No progress.
No progress at all.
Yeah, so I think, we should change this mentality, and we should share whatever we can share with other people.
Okay. Now, let's come to our final point. If Islam encourages and promotes people to seek knowledge, why are Muslims behind nowadays?
Well, this is a very interesting question, and a very crucial question at the same time. Yes, so we were talking about, the evidence, we were talking about the proofs that we have in Islam, okay, about, seeking knowledge. And, this is something to do with the current situation, okay?
Okay.
Because, as we said at the beginning, that Muslims contributed tremendously, okay, to humanity. So there's no doubt about that. So it's something to do with the people that we have nowadays. Okay. They are maybe lazy, or maybe they are not ready. Okay. So there's something to do with the people, not with the religion. Because the same religion that we have now is the same religion that we had, 400 years back, or 1400 years back. Okay. And it has the same principles, it has the same rules, the same invitations. It's something to do with ourselves now. And so there is a defect. There is something like a drawback that we have to correct, and we have to do something about it. Otherwise, we're going to be behind, forever. And it's a question of interest. It's a question of encouragement. It's a question of motivation that pushes people to do a better job, okay, when it comes to knowledge. So it's nothing to do with the religion. It's something to do with the current Muslims that we have.
But sometimes you come across people saying that the main reason that we're behind now is that we have stayed apart from the religion. We have not fulfilling our duties towards religion. That's why we have lost the knowledge. Because
Exactly.
when we have interest in our religion, then we'll have the motivation to go and seek knowledge.
Exactly.
But once you neglect the religion, then that is lost.
I totally agree. Like when we were talking about the two types of knowledge, the first one will push you definitely to the second type. Okay, and I will give you one example. Now, you can find a lot of people who are educated in their religion, and they're having really another profession. So Islam does not clash with this concept.
Okay.
Like it's good, to be dedicated for the religious knowledge, okay? But there isn't any evidence that shows, okay, that we should not seek knowledge in terms of
Elsewhere.
non-religious, knowledge. And actually, I always, meet people who are really knowledgeable about their religion, and they are doing a great job in their professions. They have a different profession that doesn't do anything with religion. Sometimes, they are not that much connected. That shows, that these people are pushed, motivated, okay, by the teaching, okay, because they are always, going together, okay. They go along with each other. So it's something, wrong with us, nowadays. And the other thing is, the idea of, being humble, okay, and being, careless, somebody will do the job, okay. It doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of Muslims who are creative and adding, more to the humanity life, okay, or the human life. We're having a lot of people who are contributing and are still contributing to our life. But we need to have, a bigger number of people who are Muslims, okay, to contribute to the humanity, because it's part of our religion, and
it's part of our duty towards humanity.
Yes,
to contribute.
Exactly. And the other thing that I've noticed that here nowadays, since we are not that much involved, with what's happening in the world, we tend to just rely on whatever is available. Okay. And it's a big problem that we should, consider and conduct, more studies, okay, so that we can show really the positive image of Islam that does not neglect or have a problem with advancing in knowledge, okay. Whatever is that kind of knowledge, okay, Islam is always there, okay, to encourage and promote knowledge.
Ahmed, a few last words to the next generation. What would you like to tell them regarding seeking knowledge?
Well, first of all, you need to understand the real meaning of knowledge. And I hope you still remember the definition that I gave at the beginning, okay, which is very complicated. And the other thing is I want people to understand the importance of knowledge in our life. We should not connect knowledge to certificates or to papers. Okay, we should really understand the deeper meaning, okay, or the deep meaning of knowledge, so that we can really give a lot to the people everywhere in the world. And we should not limit ourselves, to certain areas or to certain places. We should seek knowledge everywhere. Okay, and I hope that the new generation would represent the Muslim faith, okay, in a very positive way. And I'm very optimistic, and I'm sure that, people will do something, in the coming days or in the coming years, and let's hope for the best.
Inshallah. Ahmed, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really enjoyed, and I liked the example of the ant and the bees and the spiders, and I'm sure our listeners enjoyed as well. Thank you to all our listeners for staying with us during the month of Ramadan. Hope to see you soon, inshallah. I'm your host, Hatim Al-Absalam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.